Red button.
Yeah,
That's the one.
Here we go.
We're rolling.
We're rolling.
Oh, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year in advance to you, Sam.
Yeah, back at you. We're on the eve of the new year, and I didn't do what I said I was going to do, was silence my damn phone.
That's okay. You're a busy guy. Things happen. Well, you know, it's funny. The holidays, this year, I've been disoriented the whole 2 weeks. Literally don't remember what day of the week it is. My wife has to remind me what day of the week it is. We were on the road a lot for the first week of this holiday extravaganza.
Right.
It was fun. We had a good time. It's not the same holidays we're used to having, though. We've, we have some family members that are no longer with us, so that changes the entire dynamic. Now it's the younger group picking it up and running with it, which is kind of fun, but it also makes us feel like the old people now.
Yeah, because I have, we have I had a brother that passed, and so his birthday was on, or is on Christmas Eve.
Okay.
So yeah, this year was kind of a weird deal, only because I've been so busy working on the whole social media, learning it and just trying to prop up the show in any way possible. And then I had my father walk in, and I generally, between my father and I, we're always coordinating things, because of my mom's failing memory and dementia and stuff. So and I guess I was like balls deep and working on something, with learning something. And he walked in, and he meant nothing by it, but he's like, "Hey, don't forget it. It's your brother's birthday today."
Right.
And in my head, I started bouncing off the walls, thinking, "You don't tell me when my freaking brother's birthday
well,
is."
that's just the dad.
I know,
being,
and it's one of those things where it's kind of
yeah.
like, "Hey, you know what? I need to get out of here," because I couldn't like separate. And like I said, he meant nothing by it.
Sure. Yeah.
But it was like one of those things where there are things that I just don't have to be, or don't need to be told. But he's being helpful.
Sure. It's funny because we're starting out a podcast about comedy on the dark side today.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting because comedy's kind of taken a dark turn.
But you certainly have to be very, very careful when you approach
and we're going to talk a little bit about whether that's good or if that's really bad. And we want to start this off talking just a little bit about some phraseology that's out there. And Joe Rogan has a very popular podcast, and he comes up with some very interesting labels and theories on things. And he talks about this thing called recreational outrage. And honestly, I wrote it down because I thought it was profound, and it fits what the days and times we're living in right now.
That was during his interview with Jamie Foxx.
Jamie Foxx, yeah.
Foxx.
Yeah, he laid that down a couple years ago.
Yeah, that was such a profound statement.
I thought it was incredibly profound because it fits what's going on. I mean, the recreational outrage, a lot of people, I think they get all up in arms for reasons they don't understand. And that's kind of what we want to talk a little bit about, because what kind of spurred this thought with me was a few months ago, there was a video of Howie Mandel walking down the street. I think it was in L.A., and somebody was asking him about comedy, and he goes, "Hey, look," he says, "I'm kind of afraid to step out on the edge and say certain things anymore, because people with recording devices do terrible things to people that say things like that." And that's kind of sad in a way, because he makes a good point. He talked about Richard Pryor and how much of an influence Richard Pryor was on his comedy period when he got into comedy. And so, like I said, we're going to dive into that a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about when we first started getting interested in comedians and who they were, and kind of the direction that it's taken, because it's gotten ridiculous. It's become almost adversarial. Well, it's not almost. It is adversarial.
Well, you'll have, if a comedian says the wrong thing in today's environment, you'll have people that are calling for protests. Don't buy their tickets to their shows, ban them from events.
Right.
I mean, hell, Kevin Hart.
Yeah.
For instance, what was his involving tweets that he made, like, what, 10 years ago?
Yeah, it was about 10, 15 years ago.
And all of a sudden, people have to go back and do kind of a hot wash
Right.
of their of statements that they may have, or that they made, in jest
Yeah.
in the past, but people don't look at it as it was made in humor. They suddenly, you move that comment around and you suddenly turn it into a bullseye, and all of a sudden it's weaponized. He was joking around.
Well, this is a common practice with this modern group. What they try to do is they try to rewrite history. What they forget is that when Kevin Hart said those things,
Mm-hmm.
it was accepted to say that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was used abroad amongst a bunch of people.
Sure.
So back then, it was something that was used. Nowadays, it's been deemed as insensitive, so we're actually going to turn against it. And this is the entire movement that these people have. If it happened in the past, that means it's bad for America and bad for people, which is not true. That you learn from, and you grow from those. And so I think there's some things, let's just throw the big ones out there. You got race, religion, politics, sexuality, lifestyle, and class.
Yeah.
Okay. Most people call that life.
Yeah.
These are subject matter. Yeah.
Everybody lives their life the way they live it.
Right. And you cross every one of these lines in discussion.
And there are people out there that will find some sort of humor, or, maybe something disparaging to say about any one of those topics. Just people, you cannot take yourself so seriously that every word that somebody says that's an assault against whatever it is how you live your life is about you. It's not.
Well, what I find interesting about this current thought, this train of thought on this, is so they attack somebody for saying something they don't like, yet they'll go out and burn, break, and physically damage things for their cause.
And justify it.
And justify it by saying, well, these people are fascists, racist, bigots, whatever they are.
Think about the freaking historical monuments.
Oh, absolutely. So they're tearing down history because they don't like it. They're telling you can't make a joke about something, because a lot of times humor lightens things up. It really does. It puts everybody on a level playing field. Mm-hmm. It takes you off your high horse and it brings you right back down to humanity.
And I'm a humor driven. I try to find some reason to laugh every single day. Mm-hmm. And if it's funny, it's funny. If it's at your expense, it's still funny.
It's humor. It's a joke. I laugh at myself as much as I laugh at you.
Yeah.
And I know that when I send something out, it's going to come back. I think I'm wearing a baby blue sweatshirt today. And so it's a Hook. It's one of my fishing sweatshirts, and I really love it.
Well, I already got my jab in earlier.
Yeah, so I'm walking into the restaurant meeting my great friends for lunch, and somebody asked me if I raided my wife's closet because I'm wearing a baby blue sweatshirt, which is cool. Did we get along? Did we finish lunch?
Of course we did.
We didn't get into a fight. I didn't riot. I didn't go on social media and say you were being mean to me.
Yeah.
Well, this is what we deal with. People wear their feelings on the sleeve. We were talking today at lunch about a viral video of a guy that was in a gaming store, and he was a transgender. And he was, what did they call it? Gender misidentification? Misgendering. And what ended up happening with somebody in the statement, were they being polite, or do you think they were being...
From what I heard of the audio of the salesperson, he was trying to salvage the situation.
Yeah, he's trying to be helpful.
And this person, had already made it up in their mind that the sales clerk was... mocking them in some way by not.
He called him
able
sir. That's what he did.
Yeah,
he called him sir. He thought he was being respectful because he had his credit card and saw his name on the credit card.
Yeah, and I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, and said, "Sir, here's." Yeah, and so the guy lost his shit over that, and made an ass out of himself, and then destroyed property on the way out of the store while he was making physical threats of bodily harm. Step outside, I'll kick your ass or show you how much of a man I am or something like that.
So that little piece right there, because so if your credit card has a man's
name, says Fred Smith,
well, I'm not being funny.
No,
but I'm saying that if you haven't gone the whole way with the transition and changed your name to a female name because you want to identify as a female.
Right.
Well, just because you dress like one doesn't mean that I'm going to call you that because your credit card clearly tells me that it's a male's name. I'm sorry. Well, that's how my brain works.
And we all saw the video. The guy wasn't being a jerk about it. He wasn't being snarky.
No.
I thought he was trying to be very respectful, actually.
But he's arguing he wants to be acknowledged as a woman.
Right.
But as he's walking out, kicks over that sign in a clear sign of male rage.
Right. Well, I think it's funny because when this hits social media, a friend of ours commented, he goes, that reminds me of my ex-wife.
Now, I did make some comments on Twitter that I'm not going to repeat here.
Yeah, well.
And people there thought it was freaking hilarious.
Yeah, it is.
There's people that are of this, for this cause, that would have like raked me over the coals if they'd seen.
Well, so that's the reason why I brought this up right away early in this discussion, is the fact that we're not making fun of it. We're not making a joke of it, but we are finding humor in the reaction that this person had. Okay, so I mean, that's kind of what ends up happening in observational comedy. So if you look at some of the great comedians out there, you take guys like Robin Williams, you take Rodney Dangerfield, you take Roseanne Barr, Dave Chappelle. You look at people that talk about everyday life, Bill Engvall, Jeff Foxworthy, Sinbad, and I know I'm leaving a lot of other great comedians out to do this. The most successful ones talk about things they see in everyday life. Okay? Sometimes it's things that happen to them growing up as a kid, as a young adult in the workplace, or just interacting with humans in general. And so the story here is one of those instances where there's a lot of humor in it, but then there's a lot of sadness in it. Then what happens is people take to social media, okay, and this thing steamrolls into what fits into recreational outrage, to where it says, yeah, that guy was a racist, he was a sexist, he was actually trying to be polite. If anybody was misidentified, it's the clerk. It's the kid behind the counter, and so that's kind of where I look at this as being hypocritical. I've always said it's going to boil down that if you go against what the populace of these social justice warriors want, they're going to label you and portray you as a vile in a vile negative life, as a bigot and a racist, just because you don't agree with what they say or what they like. And I think this is where this becomes a real problem for the average person. I think for the average person, they're pretty much non-confrontational because they know there's nothing to profit from confrontation. It's either a jail sentence, a record, physical damage, harm, or even death. So why would you do that?
You have kind of a small faction out there that believe they're going to sort of radicalize this cause by going after people because they don't view things in the same light that they do.
Right.
And they're not going to correct you, they're going to berate you for it.
And so social media, the effects of social media is, in my opinion, is a lot of the busy people of the world, people are actually working, or that are elderly, or actually not elderly but older, more mature, and have a life, don't spend 24/7 on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram.
True.
Okay. So that's going to be what I call the silent majority of working Americans that have a life.
Because I want to say that so if they do find out about this, some of these issues that we're talking about, sometimes they find out through real conversations that they have with their friends about, oh, did you see this or did you see that? And
when you look at news is starting to parallel social media.
Yes, it is.
In a lot of ways.
Yes, it is.
And so you kind of wonder, when you look at the age of some of these writers and these news editors, you kind of can see where that's coming from. So social media is driving this whole machine of recreational outrage.
Well, you see that kind of the converging of the two technologies.
For sure.
It's kind of, you really can't say who's leading the chariot, because now it's you've got these two tandem vehicles that are driving this whole thing.
That's exactly. And so so like I said, we look at this and we look at comedians now. So we'll go back to Howie talking about taking risks, okay, on humor. We'll talk a little bit about dark humor. So it's funny because now your humor is definitely darker than mine.
It's darker than a lot of. I mean,
it is.
I mean, I have a select set of friends that, I mean, we have kind of
Sure.
that thing in common. So throwing
It's a
something out
banter
there-
amongst friends.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. And there every once in a while, I will throw something out there that somebody takes exception to.
Sure. Because you hit a nerve.
And not
Yeah.
and to feed back into the dark humor.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes I do that because I'm looking for I'm
You're probing for
probing.
vulnerabilities.
I'm
Yeah.
probing to figure out who can I upset.
Right.
And that's just, I find humor in that. And some people think that that's sick. Yeah, again,
It's not a victimless crime, put it that way.
I find it freaking humorous that my words somehow or another.
Well, it's funny because I'm passive aggressive. You're a little more overt. I'm kind of passive aggressive about
Right.
it. And it's funny because we share similar humor styles.
Sure.
There is certain lines that you cross that I don't cross.
Right.
And I got that. But I know who you are and I know the kind of guy you are. So I don't go, oh, well, I don't judge you based on one bad joke.
Right.
So what ends up happening with these people like Kevin Hart and all these other folks that are out there, they're judged on one bad joke.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to ruin their life over one bad joke.
Yes.
And that's just not the way it should be. I mean, you got people sitting there, you got trollers, professional trollers, just waiting for you to mess
You
up.
got people who became famous because of just trolling.
Well, so paparazzi doesn't use a camera anymore.
No,
Paparazzi
they use
use social media.
Yes.
You know, so you got people that just sit there in the weeds just waiting for you to do something that they can spread and twist. There was a great meme I saw on social media the other day. It was a picture of an Asian kid laying in the mud with a rubber boot on his face.
Okay.
Okay. And then the cutaway was there was a kid playing with his brother, and he was holding a boot on his face, and they took the picture from two different angles. One zoomed in, one zoomed out. The first one made it look like somebody was oppressing the kid by holding his face in the mud with a rubber boot.
Again, perspective.
Yeah, when you zoom back out of it, the kid was playing with a rubber boot on his head, and he just happened to catch it with his eyes shut. So, and this is what we're living in today's age with recording devices and editing.
Yeah.
You and I were just talking about video editing at lunch today, and about what all the tools that are out there on social media now.
Oh, yes.
You don't need Photoshop anymore. You can get freeware all over the place,
Yeah.
and you can do some pretty good work with just retooling and editing photos now to make your news story catch traction.
Because everybody who exists in this social media space or is trying to, I guess, scratch out some sort of significant and kind of
They want
significant
likes.
role.
They're
And
trying to get likes, yeah.
I mean, you're trying to figure out a way to bubble to the surface, and I guess in some instances we're struggling to do the same thing, but it's more for this than whatever it is that I post. But
Right.
the challenge, like my personal challenge, is whenever I'm doing something for the podcast, it's a fine balance between reflecting the tone of the podcast versus reflecting the tone of what's Sam like.
So when you describe that, I see a devil on one shoulder,
Yeah.
and I see
It can be-
there's no way an angel's on the other shoulder. It's just a dude in a sweatshirt on the other shoulder.
It's just a more gooder devil.
Yeah, a more good or devil, and they're just debating on what level this should go.
Yeah.
Well, and unfortunately though, this is what it's come down to. Is I talked about this a couple of podcasts ago about the 3-second decision making process.
Oh yes, I remember this.
And a lot of people, especially, I'm not going to use millennials because that's not fair. Okay, I'm going to basically use the uninformed that thinks they're informed by social media. Because what I look at it is when I see a story and it catches my eye and I share it, the next thing I'm doing is I'm looking. Well, actually, I do it before I share it many times. I'm looking for validity. Is it fake news or is it a real story? Mm-hmm. And how many times have we sent stuff out there and found out that it was a fake story? So what happens with the 3-second news person is that they see a Twitter feed and they believe it to be, hey, this is breaking news. This is happening. Okay. It's for real. And they share it, and it gets shared amongst how many people that aren't not going to look into it. And they may find out later that it was not true, but it's already after 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 people have seen it.
Right.
Because to your point earlier, it's all about getting hits and likes because they get paid for that.
Yes.
You get ad share for that. You get money for that. And so what ends up happening is who comes up with the most controversial Twitter or Facebook feed or whatever it is that you're getting hits on is going to get noticed, and it's going to get sponsored. So the challenge to jam your social media with stuff like that is going to be a greater number for those type of people.
Well, and the whole thing about, I guess, followers or likes or whatever is, one of the podcasts one of the popular ones that we listen to on Launch Code, I think they even addressed this thing with like if you have a following on any one of the platforms, that there are certain characters that are popular people on these platforms that actually pay for those followers. So when somebody sees a number, they're like, oh my god, this person must be popular because he has X amount of followers, not realizing that some of these people are on these farms, these data farms, where they cycle people through all the time just to log in to represent some following that you think you have.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing about your Twitter interactions. You draw a lot of that fire. You actually you're looking for it, and I like how you probe. It's kind of interesting
because I like to know how certain people think.
Sure.
And that's the only reason why I follow certain people.
Right.
Is I try, and some of those people I don't engage with them, like talk to them just so I can insult them.
No.
I tell them, hey, I'm having a civil conversation with you because I don't understand how you arrived at that philosophy or whatever. And we can, at the end of this conversation, we can continue to not agree, but let's just have some dialogue.
Well, and that's part of the problem, though. In their mind, you shouldn't exist.
Correct.
And that's where it gets kind of crazy. Because here, we'll play a little game here, okay? So I have race, religion, politics, sexuality, lifestyle, and class on the board. Okay, so I'm going to tell you that I'm Caucasian. I'm a Christian. I'm conservative, but not a Republican. I'm a heterosexual male. My lifestyle is pretty comfortable. I mean, I live what I would consider a normal but guarded life.
Right.
And I would say that I'm middle class for sure.
Right.
Okay. So when I surround my circle of influence with things, subject matter, whether it's news, music, all these other things, I don't necessarily limit myself to those things I just listed up there. Okay, I don't sit there and say, well, I'm only going to listen to stuff from Caucasian people. I'm only going to listen to Christian music. I'm only going to listen to conservative politics. I'm only going to listen to heterosexual stuff.
I only am comprised of these dynamics.
Yeah, and I don't go by that, because honestly, if you would look at some of the things I listen to and look at, you couldn't guess that I was any of those.
Right.
Because to me, it's like it's called experiencing life. It's called experiencing the world. And I'm very much a voyeur when it comes to that. And
every once in a while, you dip your toe in someplace where you've never done it before.
I want to learn something new. Anybody that knows me closely will tell you that I don't have arguments with people. I have a discussion with people. Now, I will tell you, if a barrage of questionings is like Chinese water torture to me, I get that. Yeah. I'm really not that guy. But if it's stimulating intellectual discussion, I don't mind going down the question lane.
Yeah, I was going to say, if it's questioning for questioning, that's okay. Yeah, you're going to irritate me. But if it's thought provoking questioning, okay, yes, I completely understand that.
Because I have friends on all aspects of that line I just read. I have friends on both sides, any side of that line, and a lot of it's because we share a curiosity of intellect, but we also have mutual respect for each other's space and being.
Sure. I
don't go out of my way to pick on somebody, and I will tell you, I'm the kind of guy, if you go out of your way to pick on me, you're probably going to get you're going to get it right back. Right. And you're going to get it pretty hardcore.
Now, I will say, because of social media and people use it all the time.
And I don't engage that in social media, by the way. I don't do that. I don't engage in any combat with anybody on social media.
Well, but what I'm where I'm going with it is sometimes whatever it is that you post there sometimes is the catalyst for the next engagement.
Right.
I saw that you posted this, how dare you post this, or I can't believe that
Right.
that you stooped that low to whatever it is. And I'm like, well, you don't fucking know me at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. So when you look at Facebook, you have, let's see, you have a like button, you have a heart for love, ha ha ha,
And then
wow.
a scroll button.
Yeah, and then you have the crying, and then you have an angry one.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
And-
I think there needs to be
Okay.
more.
Oh,
There needs
I
to be
think,
more.
oh, damn, should be one of them because, so like, I'll see things you put out there sometimes and I'll just laugh my ass off at it. Then there's things that go, oh, damn, but it's at the end of the day, I know you, okay? And I know everybody that's around me, and I get the intent.
Well, I want them to create a GIF that you can select that runs up to your profile photo and catches that bitch on fire.
That would be kind of fun. But the whole thing is we don't wear our feelings on our sleeves, and we don't take all this stuff seriously. Because honestly, it's in the moment. So going again back to the comedians, when they try out new material, okay? So you got a lot of comedy out there that's pretty stale.
Mm-hmm.
When you sit there and run through the gamut of what I call circuit comedians,
Right.
circuit comedians basically they're telling the same jokes every city over and over and over again for about 3 years.
Okay.
When that set wears out, then they come up with new material and they run a circle again. At some point in time, they run out of material. Okay, the material runs stale because either the political scene has changed, and because usually politicians are the ones that are made the most fun of.
Okay, so you read me you brought up an article before we started.
Yeah.
About I guess this author of this article was based at probably in
Brisbane, Australia.
Yeah. Okay, I was going to say New Zealand or Australia because the comedian she was bringing up, I only recognized one only because this guy was notorious for off-color music and humor back in the 90s.
Right.
That was Kevin Bloody Wilson. So, but with her, how she summarized it was, I sort of agreed with her with like what you just said.
Yeah, she
where
called it punching. She goes, the material used gender, race, and sexuality as punching bags.
Right.
And she's right. I mean, she's like, what kind of intellectual genius does it take to take a shot at those? And she's right there. I agree with that. I think to me, if you're going to tell a joke, we were talking about the comparison between this guy and Milton Berle and Rodney Dangerfield in the past, to where they basically used overt comedy in the sense of where you would basically say something and leave it up to your mind to decide who I'm talking about, what direction I'm going. They never would come out and say it, and they would pick on a person. That's intellectual.
Well, and so I will say smartly that, during, because Burl came out of the vaudeville days. So I guess, when television became more popular, they had standards and there was things that you could and could not say.
Sure.
So from his perspective, as long as he knew where the line was, he could get his toes like almost to the edge for the time period, and then basically let your imagination run away with the thought that he's already put in your head.
Sure. Well,
which is smart.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at late night TV, they're always running ads for the celebrity comedy roasts from back in the day, and it was generally Carol Burnett, well, Dean
Robin
Martin.
Williams.
Yeah, Dean Martin sponsored almost every one of those. So it was the Dean Martin comedy roasts. So what Dean Martin would do is get all his friends together at a club.
Okay.
Remember that?
I remember Dean Martin would
Oh
play
yeah,
a very big part.
So you and I watched a lot of Jeffrey Ross roasts, where they Lisa Lampanelli and all these people on there, which I think she's absolutely vulgar but very funny.
But that also tells me that format that they were doing wasn't new.
No, it's not new.
It was they took an old successful concept and made it more modern.
Well, you had Don Rickles, you had Dean Martin, you had Foster Brooks, you had all these old names. Rodney Dangerfield broke out right at the end of all of that. You have all these Sammy Davis Jr., all these guys were on there. Peter Lawford, this is the Rat Pack basically roasting their friends. And so, you had this comedy up there, and they were taking shots at each other like you wouldn't believe. And they were great friends, okay? They were friends afterwards. They do it at the presidential press meeting.
Yeah.
And the gloves come way off there.
Yeah, lately.
Lately because this is a mean group
Right.
that's out there, and they're just out to do harm. They like to cry foul, but then they inflict harm while they do it.
But how dare you?
Yeah.
And I
Well,
will
they're
say
sacred cows.
even as a politician, or people who sit in Congress, you really can't slap back at these people because they will rake you. They will.
Well, they're
rake
waiting
through
for
the
you to.
coals
Yeah.
If you do say something disparaging back at them,
Dude, they do this every day.
Yes.
They wake up every day looking for. They're looking for something to jump on. That's just the way it is, because they know that if you're stupid enough to step out in line of fire, they're going to get 15 minutes of newsreel on you. That's just the way it is. So yeah, so you have this movement in comedy that was always there. Okay, and I kind of agree with the sense in the article that they're uncreative. They decided to take the path of least resistance, and they wore it out.
So my deal on that is because I don't know how you pull that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're still getting, I guess one way to do it is, hey, if I'm renting a 5,000 seat arena and I'm selling out every single time, well, my material is, and I would, in my mind's eye, thinks that's what's putting their butts in the seats. So the moment you experience a lull or a drop in any of those ticket sales, a lot of it probably has to do with probably the region of the country you're in too, because you'll probably go someplace where your comedy doesn't play.
So I'll give you a great example of that. This is probably 15 years ago. Remember the comedy club at Willowbrook here?
Yeah.
The Laugh Spot?
Yeah.
Okay, so we went with a bunch of friends, and it's at Willowbrook Mall is where it's at. Okay, so just remember, it was, and so remember that part of the story. So we're there, and they had Paul Provenza was the headliner. So Paul Provenza is a comedian. They call him a comedian. I don't think he's that funny. Anyway, he's a comedian, and he has a show called The Green Room, where they all these comedians sit around a table and they talk about stories. This is what he has now.
You know what? I think this might have been the show that you and I were talking.
Yes, it
that
is.
I was talking about. Okay.
Yeah. So back in the day when there was a TV series called Northern Exposure, and Rob Morrow left and Paul Provenza took his place as the doctor. It was right when that series ended. And it was right after, it had to be after 9/11 because he was making jokes about 9/11. So it was right around that time. So anyway, Provenza comes out. And he starts out with these jokes about terrorists and, well, first of all, he walks out there and says, Willowbrook. He says, where I'm from, that's where the retards are. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, first of all, you're looking out. So there's, guys like myself and all of our friends are there, and there's a bunch of cops sitting at a table. Now, I don't know if y'all know what Texas cops look like, but these are big shaved head dudes that dress like rednecks, right? And there's a table full of them right over there. And he's not really winning them over. So he starts talking about terrorists. And he goes, yeah, this whole TSA thing's out of control. Yeah, like they're wanting to take a fingernail file away from you. So anyway, he moves on to Jesus. He goes, you Texans.
That's always a good move.
Yeah, he goes, you Texans love Jesus, and he starts saying, I'm Jewish, so you know where I'm coming from. So anyway, he starts making very overt homosexual references about Jesus hanging on the cross with his loincloth. And dude, I want you to know, you can hear a pin drop in this room. Because this joke may work in LA, this may work in San Francisco, but it ain't going so well for him in Northwest Harris County, Texas.
Right.
So this cop stands up and he gathers his wife up and they're starting to leave. And Provenza starts in on him. Oh, I see. I have to listen to your shit all day long, but you can't listen to my shit.
Did he know who this person was?
And the cop turned back towards the stage, and all of a sudden the mic cut off and the lights came on, and the manager came out to the stage and apologized to everybody for this guy's behavior. He goes, look, we never know what these guys are going to say. We apologize. And the cop was waiting for him. The cop was waiting for him at the door. Because, at the end of the show, they always want to do these things.
Yeah, like meet and greet thing.
Yeah, so he was ushered off stage and he left the building. So this is a typical story of a comedian that doesn't know the region, tries to do something edgy, and then steps way over the line.
So
I thought it was hilarious. I was sitting there going, "Oh my god, I can't believe you said all this."
So one night, my ex-girlfriend and I went to the laugh. What's it called? The laugh spot.
Laugh spot, yeah.
Laugh spot. So, and I couldn't tell you who it was that was there. I mean, because I remember like a long time ago, we went to my ex-wife and I, we would go to Spellbinders.
Oh yeah, I know it's that. Yeah.
I mean, Spellbinder. We saw some like really good acts. So anyway, so my ex-girlfriend and I went to this comedy club, and we saw somebody there who, now it wasn't this person here, but it was somebody who decided to do sort of similar tactic.
Yeah.
And I forget what group he targeted, but what he was saying is, I want to say that he was targeting. It might have been black football players. I'm not sure.
Man.
Like professional.
Yeah, that's not smart.
But what he was saying is, hey, when the show ends, when you're walking out to your car, if you see somebody that sort of looks like me getting beat up in the parking lot by a group of these big football players, would you please at least call like 911 or something?
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
And I've seen several comedians do that.
And
yeah.
Because I don't remember, I couldn't even tell you if I laughed at whatever it was, but the guy clearly knew when he approached this subject matter that he was going to catch some shit, because there had to be somebody in this room that this message resonated with.
Caught his eye. And some comedians are really good at that. There's a guy named Steve Hofstetler that has a YouTube channel on all the hecklers that attack him, and he just comes right back at them.
Yeah, I know which one.
So they have a following, so people actually now seek him out so they can heckle him. And I'll tell you what, first of all, you're doing it at your peril.
Yeah, because that dude's like sharp.
Yeah, he's actually very good at that. And when you hit somebody that makes their career from words, you better show up with words of your own. Because I can tell you, at the end of the day, it's usually the drunks. It's usually some drunk person that says something stupid. And you just don't navigate well when you've been drinking. Some do, some don't. Most don't. But yeah, so there are those kind of comedians out there. Now, to me, I think that stuff is funny. Okay? But what ends up happening is you get a guy like, what's his name, Lauren Richards or Michael Richards?
Oh,
the whole black thing. Oh my God! First of all, that was stupid. That was just
for him.
Yeah, it was stupid.
I might have watched
it. It was in anger. I know it was in anger, and he got frustrated and he started spouting off stuff. Now I want to tell you, I'm one that you have the right to say anything that you're willing to back up.
Yeah.
Okay. And you have to be willing to and accept the repercussions for what you do.
Yes. Yeah. You're not gonna avoid those.
But it's not smart, in my opinion, because what ends up happening is you're not leaving anything to the imagination. You're just flat out putting it out there.
Right.
To me, that takes no creativity. So we have a friend that sometimes prides himself on basically stating the obvious and driving the nail home. Okay, instead of you and I, we kind of toy with things.
You
dance around it and kind of go to the body a few times.
Throwing lit matches to something that's got gasoline on it, but you don't hit it quite.
Yeah, we don't want it to go up in a big flame. We like to watch it like burn slowly. That's that song you keep talking about, slow dancing in a burning room. Is that what's called? So that's kind of so to me, it's more of an intellectual approach to things. Because my first exposure to really intellectual comedy, George Carlin. I mean, my God, George Carlin made you think of things that you go. Him and Stephen Wright, first of all, made me laugh.
Wright. Oh my God.
Stephen Wright told a joke about his doctor saying you need to get out and do more things, more hobbies. You need to get more hobbies. So he took up astronomy. And he said, I cut a hole in my ceiling so I can see the stars. He goes, it sure pissed the guy that lived upstairs off. I mean, those are jokes that are funny. George Carlin talking about apartments. He goes, why do we call them apartments? We should call them togetherments. He says, there's nothing apart about it. I mean, to me, those are genius comedy lines. You had Sam Kinison talking about feeding the hungry, feeding people who live in the desert. He goes, how about this? Let's get some money together and move people to where the food is.
Yes.
I mean, those to me are the funny guys. So you can be extremely funny without going to the race, religion, politics, sexuality thing.
Right.
Okay. Now, when you do that, you're going to do this at great risk, no matter where you're at. Because back in the day, when court jesters used to tell jokes to the royalty, if they weren't funny, their head was chopped off. They were dead.
That's correct.
You know, so you had to choose wisely when you told these jokes.
Your life really depended
upon it. Oh, he's not funny. Thumbs down.
Yeah.
And the second part of the entertainment is throwing him into the lions. You know?
No, the second part is his head is the soccer ball.
Exactly. Yeah. So, you know, we live in a day of great choices. Okay. You can choose to be happy. You can choose to be sad. You can be helpful or whatever it is that you want to be. But what we end up finding ourselves is we're being steered by this tiller of political correctness.
Right.
Okay. And it's not even political correctness. It's agenda driven. It's agenda driven.
So the political, I guess.
Who defines that?
Well, so that's kind of where I'm going with this. Is the political correctness is being pushed by a group of people, and it's not even a massive group of people.
I think it's the bullies. The people that have been bullied are bullying back. Okay, if you look at it, if you've been the butt of these jokes, if you're overweight, if you're homosexual, if you're transgender, if you're a race that isn't a mass race, whatever it is, and you've been bullied, it's like the revenge of the nerds in a way. And I don't mean that detrimental at all, because it's bound to happen at some point in time. You push somebody enough, they're going to fight back. That's why you don't push. Okay, I've never liked bullies. All as a kid growing up through school, anybody that knows me from school will tell you, I despised bullies. I didn't like what they did. I don't like how you can strip somebody's dignity from them because you never get it back. At that point in time, you're like the pee-pee pants kid, you know, that never, you may have had, somebody may have poured water on your lap, but because some popular kid in school said you wet your pants, it sticks. And this is why I look at these people like this with the social masses. Well, that's how they do it.
I kind of look at political correctness as the new global warming.
Yeah, I think it's what's currently what they can currently get away with. I mean, so like what was politically correct in the 40s? Ain't no way it's politically correct now.
But you have people,
so it goes through generations.
But you have people that want to go all the way back to the fucking 40s and crucify them.
Sure.
Because they were, in some people's minds, they were too ignorant, backwards, or whatever to recognize that what they were laughing at at the 40s was wrong.
Right.
Not really. No, they just didn't. Their whole life didn't revolve around their fucking feelings.
No, for sure. And while your feelings didn't count for much, it was the Mother Nature rules kind of thing, survival of the fittest.
And as close as that was to, I mean, by that period, you're really kind of coming off the Great Depression.
Sure.
So the things that were going on with the Great Depression were way more important than your goddamn feelings about however it is that you felt about.
No doubt.
Some minor, in my mind, a minor topic.
There's some funny memes out there, and one of the funniest ones that I've seen is the fact of just talking about unfriending somebody on social media. And it showed two kids fighting in a playground. He says, modern days, you just delete them and block them. Back when we were kids, you beat their ass.
Yeah.
That's how friendship ended.
Right.
You know, and it's funny because do I advocate beating up somebody? No, I don't. I think that's just kind of stupid. If you defend yourself, sure. Defend yourself with extreme prejudice.
I'm all for defending yourself.
For sure. I don't want to seek a fight though.
No.
Because honestly, nobody wins that way. Now, you know, sometimes you do have to fight though. Sometimes you don't have a choice.
Well, okay, so when a fight escalates from just words, okay, no. A fight escalates because somebody came and put their fucking hands on me.
Well, this group that promotes this recreational outrage, that's always their next step. It's always, once I beat you up in social media, then I'm going to physically protest your way of living. I'm going to boycott how you make money.
You're talking about just kind of an escalation.
Yeah, it's just an escalation of force because if your opinion is not popular, if your opinion is not popular and it's not gaining traction, they always escalate force.
Which it's something that's been covered in just about every left-leaning thing that I've ever read.
Sure.
Where you'll have people out there that want to adopt the practice of, well, I'm just going to become more militant.
Right.
I don't fault you for thinking that that's your next course of action.
Right.
But I do want you to know that your course of action has consequences.
Right.
So I hope that the decision that you make is a smart one.
Well, a lot of the ways they're doing it now is economically as well. Look at Roseanne Barr.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
so we took a lighthearted look at the Roseanne Barr incident.
But my counter to her
Yeah.
is going to be Tim Allen and Last Man Standing.
Sure.
They somehow they got him off the air, and look where he is right now, back on the air.
Well, Tim didn't do the things she does. Okay, Tim didn't jump on Twitter and he didn't basically fuel the fire in the sense that she did. Okay, so no matter how she's going to try to explain
Yes.
what she did with the Valerie Jarrett story, that was an ill-advised move on her part. That's a joke you keep within your circle. You don't share it with 50 million Twitter followers. You just don't. And that's where she messed up.
I would.
Well, yeah,
but I'm not.
but
I'm
you
not
don't have a
famous,
career
yeah.
to lose over it either.
True.
And so when you are making money from John Q. Public in a media-controlled environment, you need to think about your audience.
Right.
Tim Allen's story is a little different. Tim Allen appealed to the power of his fan base.
Right.
His fan base brought him back.
Now, I will say this is, if you are going to do something like this, if you are bound to be, successful in it, and any kind
Have
of
your own network with your own satellite.
all I'm going to tell you is do whatever it is you want, but after you saved a bunch of money first.
Yes.
So that way, if somebody comes after you, the impact you're not going to feel.
It's nil for sure. Yeah, I think that's good advice. I don't know. I just think it's funny how this group of PC police they reserve the right to judge. Okay.
Yes.
They also reserve the right to define the parameters of the definition. Because you and I were talking about this one. We won't go into what the specific one was, but we went to the dictionary to look it up, and we found that there was a change to that definition in 2014. It added this new word in.
Yeah, because it is now an acknowledged term in a world recognized dictionary.
Right. So you see a lot of that. So what you're seeing is you're seeing a lot of what I call activists. They get involved and they set out to change the rules. I mean, years ago we were promised hope and change.
Yeah.
And you're starting to see how that appeal has perpetuated itself through the system.
And you bring up a very important thing is with that topic that we're not going to go into, but if somebody goes to the lengths to change the lexicon of a language, that is a pretty powerful movement that you believe so devoutly in your mission that you will go petition and politic an influential body to take your idea, your concept, your language, the terms that you use, and throw them into an accepted dictionary. That way, it's on full display. You have now validated what you've
what
done.
you're doing is you're influencing future generations to this existence of this word. And that's fine. Honestly, it's up to the parents to raise their kids the way they're supposed to raise them, and it's up to us as a society to make sure that these things are in check. That you can't just let somebody that has an agenda go in there and redefine things for one select group. It needs to fit the needs of the country, not just one individual. I think it's interesting because I think the consumer is making choices that are influencing a lot of things. And what I mean by that is that if you know this comedian or this television show that you're going to watch is of controversial material, you're not going to go pay to see it if you don't want it in your house.
Right.
Now, if you want to go see the train wreck, it's definitely worth the price of admission. I'm going to go watch it, but that doesn't mean I have the right to go social media now and start hating on the guy. Okay, this is where I get a little twisted with social media, because a lot of people inadvertently like and share without really doing the homework.
It's social media, and in some instances, for some people, they're sort of hypocrites.
Oh, of course they are.
You went and paid money to see somebody you don't freaking agree with, just so you can get on social media to tell people that you spent money to go do something you didn't want to do or don't agree with.
Right.
Well, that's fucking dumb.
Yeah, it is. it is. And that's, again, a responsibility of the consumer. If you don't want to be there, don't be there. If you don't want your money to go there, don't spend it there. Because you're starting to see a lot of these breakout channels now that are getting away from NBC, CBS, and ABC.
Right.
And even the traditional cable networks. Because I mean, Fox Network's okay. I'll be honest with you. I cannot tell you the last time I sat down and watched a network or a cable affiliate show. I haven't done it.
Me neither.
Yeah.
Nor do I even really look at their news site.
Me neither.
I can't tell you the last time I looked at it. But the thing that the thing I take great offense to is when you have a body of people who want to who take it as their mission to remove the right for me to view or find humor or do whatever it is that I want to do. They want to take that right away from me because it's an assault, or it's in their mission statement to get rid of this. No, it's overstepping into an arena where people find pleasure or humor in whatever it is. And all of a sudden, you want to, and this group of people want to step in to wipe this from from existence.
Right.
No, that's,
and it does, and it lives on. Trust me. Yeah. There's if it's on electric media somewhere, it gets shared. It's out there.
Oh yeah.
You know, you can't hide it. I think it's funny because for me, you can't rewrite history. You can attempt to rewrite history, but history is just that. It's happened. And there's always going to be somebody that remembers it. There's somebody that sat down after the Battle of the Little Bighorn and drew out the battle on a blanket somewhere that's sitting in somebody's closet somewhere that was an eyewitness to this event. You have cave drawings. You have electronic data that is just stored. I mean, how many files do you have?
Oh, I couldn't even tell you.
Hundreds of thousands. I know. I'm the same way. I
just
store
between
stuff.
Freaking my stored hard drives.
Yeah, I mean, so it's always going to be out there.
And so I'm glad that I do that because this one term that we talked about before we started that you brought up was the whole PC culture censoring, which I think, particularly with Twitter, Facebook, I don't know of. Those two are the ones that really stick out in my mind, where their fallback position whenever something objectionable to them pops up is you've violated community standards.
Right.
So, and I get it. It's their company. I
well, what the big print gives you, the small print always takes back.
Yes.
Anytime you sign a EULA and you accept terms, you're subject to that. So you know what? People that get all pissed off about that, get over that shit.
But the reason why I store stuff is because how long before the stuff that is banned is no longer available? You can't find it anywhere.
Yeah. So going into a sort of a wrap up, let's talk a little bit about who our favorite comedians are and when we came about doing the watching these guys. Who makes you laugh, Sam? Who's really the guys out there that get you going?
I really can't. Well, okay. Currently, I'm my more musical. I'd probably say like Paul Thorne because I like his musical humor and stuff like that. That's the most recent that I can think of. I can't really think of a lot of.
I saw him at Main Street a couple months ago in Tomball. It was a great show.
The most current, because I don't really keep track of current trending comedy like Bill Burr. I know who he is.
Yeah.
I mainly know him only because he's one of the voices on one of the current Netflix series I'm watching now. The one about
F for Family.
F for Family. Yes. So and he's freaking hilarious there.
Yeah.
Along with every other voice actor that's in that show. It's funny.
Well, it's funny because for me, I can go through decades of this. I remember as a kid. So as a kid, Laurel and Hardy was the funny stuff. When
Right.
I was a kid, we would watch the Laurel and Hardy stuff, the Little Rascals. Those to me were comedic.
Yeah.
Those are very funny shows. And as we got older, I guess as a kid, your comedy comes from your parents because that's what they allowed you to watch on TV back in the day.
Exactly. Yes.
You only had one television in the house, and they
Yep.
would only run it from certain times of the day. So around our house, the TV wouldn't come on until 6 o'clock, and it went off at 10 o'clock after 11 o'clock after the news.
So
Then everybody was in
if
bed.
we're like you brought up, I had to when I was younger. I went to this really kind of a unique daycare place that was right down the street.
You're going back to a toddler?
Yeah, I mean, no, not toddler.
Okay.
I was
That's funny.
from I guess probably from about kindergarten up to maybe
Right.
like third grade. The only reason that I was there is because both my parents worked,
Right.
and my grandmother was the next alternative, and
Sure.
she was just on the cusp of retiring.
Right.
So, but this daycare that we went to, and it was nothing like a daycare that have ever seen.
Sure.
It was like going to Disneyland. This place was ginormous for what it was.
Right.
I couldn't even tell you out what's currently available that's
Right.
even remotely close, but it had this like playground stuff. It had playground stuff everywhere, and it was like 3 acres.
Right.
So anyway, during certain parts of the day, they brought all the kids in, and there must have been like 75, 80, 100 kids in this thing at any given time.
So you got to see cartoons.
So yes, they would show
Because cartoons is
we,
the earliest form of comedy for a kid.
So we grew up on Heckle and Jekyll and
Longhorn, what's it? Foghorn Leghorn.
Yeah, so all the way
Yosemite
through,
Sam, all that funny stuff.
all the way through Little Rascals and Laurel and Hardy and all that. And then as you get older, you start, you go home and you see more modern humor because they played the safe bet by showing us cartoons and stuff. Like nothing was cutting edge.
The PC group has a problem with all those cartoons.
Oh, now
They're racist. They're violent. Oh, come on. It was just funny stuff when you were a kid. So moving into more adult. So, I mean, for me, I would say that when we were teenagers, just getting out of high school or at the end of the year, Saturday Night Live
Yes.
was by far one of the funniest comedy shows. It was actually so influential that somebody tried to go after it with a show called Fridays.
Oh, I loved. Well,
Remember Fridays?
That's where Michael Richards.
Yeah, Michael Richards came from, and all those people. So we used to get together at a friend's house,
Fridays.
at the basement,
Was hilarious.
and we would watch Saturday Night Live. And so the earliest comedy would be John Belushi and Steve Aykroyd, Dan Aykroyd. I'm sorry,
right.
and Jane Curtin, and Chevy Chase, and all these people that are on the show, all the way up through the Hartman years, the Phil Hartman years, and the Eddie Murphy years. So for all these years, we would find some bunch of us would all get together and watch all this funny stuff. And then stand-up started hit when HBO came out.
Yeah, because that's where I started seeing all these
HBO
people
started
I
bringing
didn't
in
even
one of
know.
the funniest comedies I ever saw was Robin Williams in a show called Faster Than a Speeding Bullet. And you talk about a guy that was a comedic genius. Robin Williams hit you 100 miles an hour with some of the craziest stuff you ever saw. Howie Mandel was doing HBO specials as well back in that time. And that's when he did that little Bobby character with the little kid voice.
So my first introduction to Howie Mandel was the show Make Me Laugh.
Yeah, Make Me Laugh. Yeah.
Because I was at AIT with a female there who was able to make that voice.
Yeah, that little
and
Bobby voice.
It was just something that she could do.
Right.
And it always amazed me with being able to, that people who could do these voices. So.
Sure. Yeah, so we're going to move through him. And I would say now I'm moving into more, Sinbad is one of my favorite comedians. I'd say, well, actually, let me say Rodney Dangerfield, Bill Hicks, and Mitch Hedberg were hilarious. Unfortunately, they're all three gone.
Right.
They're not here anymore. Then moving up into Chappelle, Sinbad, Bill Engvall. So I go Bill Engvall, Jeff Foxworthy, Ron White. Larry the Cable Guy is kind of weird for me.
No, Ron White to me is fun.
I've seen him live twice, and he gets shit faced in all those concerts.
He's funny only because of the whole drinking thing.
Yeah.
Because anybody that knows me goes, "Oh, big shocker."
Yeah.
Sam likes Ron White.
I've seen Ron White lose his set twice,
but he's not my favorite. I really don't. I don't really know if I have a favorite currently, only because I don't partake in a whole lot of.
Well, Sinbad makes me
stand-up
laugh
comedy.
because he talks about some of the funniest stuff on
Sure.
the planet, which is life. So anyway, I move into all that. I know there's other comedians that leave out, but those are the ones I tend to gravitate to. Now, I think that Kevin Hart's funny. I think he's a very funny comedian.
I thought he was funny in 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Yeah,
and
well, he did a recent one called Night School, which was pretty funny, where he went back to school. But him and The Rock did one called Central Intelligence.
I did see that.
That was hilarious. He's more of a comedic actor. His stand-up, it's funny because sometimes they overdo it. Like guys like Will Ferrell, I don't think Will Ferrell's funny at all. He has funny moments, but he's not funny. He's a ridiculous clown moron.
So my buddy Jeff and I, we went to go see this Holmes and Watson or Watson.
Oh,
Holmes.
I hear people leaving the theater before it's even over. It's
so
that bad.
Here's what. Okay, I didn't think it was as bad, only because I'm a Step Brothers fan.
Yeah. So what's that guy? Riley.
John C. Reilly.
John C. Reilly. Yeah.
So to me, it was like watching the Step Brothers do
detective
Holmes and
work.
Watson.
Yeah.
But the reason why I found it funny is because when Jeff and I were growing up, and we had this other individual that was part of our little trio, where we would just you could take just the most mundane topic, and we would come up with the craziest twists on stuff, and it would turn out to be the most humorous thing that you could think of.
Yeah.
But it started off as boring.
Yeah.
We just made it funny because we needed funny.
Right.
So
No, I hear you. Well, let's close it off with the political activist comedians, because there's a lot of them out there.
Oh yeah.
It seems like the stage is used also for what I would call hate.
Yeah, everybody's personal favorite.
Yeah.
Freaking Amy Schumer.
Yeah, you got Amy Schumer out there. Well, you've got George Lopez.
I don't even pay attention to
Yeah,
him.
well, nobody does. You got George Lopez that gets out there and he preaches hate. You got Schumer that thinks she's funny. She's only out there because Chuck Schumer's her uncle. I mean, that's really only reason why she's out there.
She has any relevance.
She's not funny. So what ends up happening with these comedians like this is that if you're not creative, you get accused of stealing jokes. Okay? So you had Amy Schumer. She's been in controversy with joke stealing.
Right.
Her and Kathleen Madigan go back and forth. Kathy Madigan is one of the funniest comedians I've ever seen in my life.
I know the name.
Catholic girl from St. Louis, Missouri.
If I saw
funny.
her, I bet you I would.
She is hilarious. She would be right in your wheelhouse.
Okay.
You need to listen to her more. So they got into it about joke stealing, and when you watch the comparisons, you can kind of see it. Joe Rogan and Carlos Mencia are probably the most famous.
Yeah, I know
at that when Rogan went on stage and they got into it. And so you see all that, and what ends up happening at some point in time is when you hear something funny, you want to repeat it to somebody.
Right.
But, like on this podcast, we're real careful about protecting other people's material. We're not going to come on here and do what other people do and get accused of trying to copy somebody.
I'm going to, if I copy somebody, I'm going to tell you who I got it from.
Sure. Well, when we use Rogan's recreational outrage, we definitely give respect and props to Joe for that. Because I think
that was genius.
It's genius. It's probably one of the smartest tags I think I've seen anywhere. And it's funny because I think a lot of times people will take that shortcut. Okay, so going back to how this whole thing started about race, religion, politics, sexuality, lifestyle, and class, what ends up happening is if you're not intellectually stimulating and you're trying to make a living, you're going to choose that path of least resistance and you're going to risk getting found out or not. And that's where I feel comedy is failing itself. Mm-hmm. Going back to what that article said, where comedians are figuring out. I wrote it down. I'm gonna get it so I say it right. Comedians that are moving forward in today's age have figured out a way to do comedy without punching down the obviously overused subject matter, and they do it in a way to make jokes funny. And I agree with that. I think that what you end up doing is you take somebody that is looking at life, and instead of using curse words, they use more of a descriptive way to go about it. Because remember when comedy was nothing but F this and F that and F this?
I will say that if you're able to sort of paint a portrait of a funny situation, it allows people to get a visual, sort of a visual imprint of what you're describing. And sometimes that just being able to impart that idea and have and everybody's is going to reconstruct it differently in their head, and some may come up with a memory that's come up with an image that's funny as hell,
right? And
then you'll have other people that just that they don't grasp that concept of being able to visualize the word craft that the
so you're using that in a way of like, well, when you write something, write it to an 8th grade reading level is what you're saying. Okay. And that's what a lot of people would say. Well, what I would say was to anybody that's a comedian out there, spend some time and learn some words. Okay, learn your craft. Your craft is communicating. Your craft is telling a story. Okay, if you want to take the cheap, dirty, sleazy, easy route, I'm sure there's an audience for you out there. I'm not saying quit doing it, because it's your right to do that. Let the court of capitalism determine whether your material is good or not. But at the end of the day, quit giving these PC guys control over your craft. Okay? If you believe hard enough in what you're doing is the right thing, continue to do it. Fuck those guys.
Yeah.
Okay? At the end of the day, those are your words. Those are your thoughts. You let the public decide what they want to listen to and what they don't want to listen to.